Tonight on Reporting Scotland, snow and sub-zero temperatures arrive from Siberia as travellers are warned they face major disruption over the next 24 hours.
Avoid travel. Ask yourself, is your journey absolutely necessary? If not, do not make it.
The effects are already being felt with dozens of schools closed tomorrow across the country. Also on the programme, Holyrood throws down the gauntlet to Westminster over Brexit by publishing its own EU withdrawal bill to protect devolution. Ryanair closes its base at Glasgow Airport, putting hundreds of jobs at risk.
She's now got 2 gold medals. She's the champion again.
And she's the star of Scottish athletics. We speak to Laura Muir about her hopes for a medal at the World Indoor Championships. And only 10 of these were ever made. Now a project hopes to recreate the Scottish-built cycle car. Good evening. People across large parts of the country are being warned to avoid travelling with extreme weather expected to arrive early tomorrow morning. Persistent heavy snow is predicted to fall up and down the east coast and across the central belt. Scotland's Transport Minister says he's on the cusp of issuing the highest possible level of alert, with people being urged to heed the warnings. Well, in a moment, we'll be around the country hearing about preparations and logistics being put in place. But first, this report from Stephen Godden.
When it comes to weather, there is, it seems, little room for understatement, and yet the early effects of the beast from the east were relatively tame. In Aberdeenshire, there were a handful of school closures. At times, the snow made life tricky for drivers, but it prompted these gamekeepers to think about the days ahead.
I think we're prepared, used to snow up here and got plenty of sticks in the shed, so I think it'll be alright.
Across almost all of Scotland today, a yellow Met Office warning for snow has been in place. But it's what's predicted to arrive from this direction tomorrow that's causing the most concern.
At the National Traffic Control Centre, they're monitoring warnings closely. Tomorrow morning, up and down the east coast and across the central belt, yellow turns to amber, which means disruption.
This is the strongest possible amber warning. It's actually on the cusp of potentially being upgraded to a red warning, something we haven't seen for snow, in fact, since the modern warning system began. So extremely concerned. That's why the message is very clear. If you're in that affected area, avoid travel.
That simple message designed to avoid a repeat of what happened in January when hundreds were left stranded on the M74.
If a lorry becomes jackknifed or motorists become stranded on an incline, very quickly a traffic jam builds up, people lose traction, and that's how we face a situation where we've got hundreds of motorists stranded. So even if you've got a really good 4x4 with winter tyres fitted, if the road's blocked, you're not going anywhere.
Machines big and small help prepare for the bad weather.
We'd be delighted to take you in the bus rather than you worrying about driving and getting
At this Highland charity, the telephone is one way of reassuring vulnerable people they won't be cut off. People like Joy, registered blind. Heavy snow makes life difficult for her and guide dog Ryan.
He knows his routes, he knows his way to all the places that we go regularly. But when there's snow on the ground, he can't find the kerb, and neither can I. He can't find the edge of the kerb, so it's difficult for him to know exactly where he is sometimes, and which makes it difficult for me as well.
The beast hasn't bared its teeth yet. If and when it does, the warnings are stark. Stephen Godden, Reporting Scotland.
Well, let's go to Morag Kinneborough, who's at a Gritter depot in Midlothian for us this evening. Good evening, Morag, and I would understand preparations in full swing.
Yes, they've shifted over 300 tonnes of grit salt around this area already today. Many more vehicles, gritters and snowplows loading up to head back out again, trying to keep the main roads clear overnight. Businesses are being advised, with the serious weather that could even turn extreme overnight, they have to be flexible so that staff, if they're in an amber affected area, may not be able to travel tomorrow. Road hauliers are saying if this really serious weather does emerge, they won't be able to get their deliveries through, so companies must adjust their plans accordingly. We know power companies are standing by with extra engineers to repair any electrical failures that may happen overnight. The same is true of mobile phone and landline communications, which could be disrupted not only for tomorrow, but if it is as serious as some say, then possibly for the day or two after that as well. We know the councils are on standby, saying they're ready to help anybody who's vulnerable. They will issue updates overnight and throughout the day on any services that are disrupted. And meanwhile, the advice to people is very simple. If you're in an amber affected area, make sure that you are safe, that you have food, medicines and alternative power, especially if you are in a remote rural area, as they wait and watch and see when the worst of this weather will hit.
Thank you very much, Maura. Well, let's go to St Boswell's now in the Borders. Now, reporter Cameron Butto. Cameron, Transport Scotland is warning that a few rural communities might face some difficult days.
That's right. The Scottish Borders Council took the decision this afternoon to close all schools across the region for tomorrow and most likely for Thursday as well. The only other council to do that in Scotland is East Renfrewshire. And the police are now saying to avoid any travel during the amber warning period, which kicks in at 6 o'clock down here tomorrow morning. They are expecting 5 to 10 centimetres of snow widely across the borders tomorrow, possibly 25 centimetres of snow in certain areas. But one of their main concerns is over the next couple of days, snow showers sweeping across the area, coupled with blizzard conditions, high winds and possible thunderstorms as well. And that could lead to accumulations of snow of more than 40 centimetres. That's more than 1.5 foot of snow. And that's that concern for these remote and rural locations, particularly the ones up in high grounds and further away from the central borders, because the Scottish Borders Council and the police are saying to expect significant disruption across the borders. So if the snow does arrive here, then it's going to be many days before things get back to normal.
Cameron, thank you very much. Now in other news, the Scottish Government has thrown down the gauntlet over Brexit and published its own alternative to the EU withdrawal bill. Presiding officer Ken McIntosh warned tonight that the new bill goes beyond Holyrood's powers, but Scottish ministers say they respectfully disagree. Here's our political correspondent Glenn Campbell.
It's not just UK fisheries management and support that will no longer be an EU responsibility after Brexit. There's animal health and welfare, cross-border help in the fight against crime, air quality and even noise management at airports.
These are among 111 powers in devolved areas that Brexit will bring home. In most cases, the UK government accepts that home means here at Holyrood. But there are some powers they want to exercise at Westminster to ensure consistency across the UK. And for the Welsh and Scottish governments, that's an unacceptable power grab.
At Holyrood, ministers have introduced their own Brexit legislation as an alternative to the EU withdrawal bill at Westminster.
It's our obligation, indeed it's our duty, to protect the devolution settlement the people of Scotland voted for. That's what we are endeavouring to do, despite all the difficulties.
The difficulties include the presiding officer's opinion that the law the Scottish Government proposes is out with Holyrood's powers.
This is the first time since the reconvening of the Scottish Parliament in 1999 that the Government has introduced a bill when the presiding officer has not been satisfied as to legislative competence. We recognise that. We are mindful of what a serious moment it is.
The Conservatives say there is still time for the Scottish and UK governments to find another way.
This is the climate of constructive, serious engagement in which the SNP now introduces a continuity bill. And this is the reason why we on these benches consider its introduction today to be both unwelcome and unnecessary.
But the Greens say the Holyrood bill is needed.
The introduction of this bill is an absolutely necessary response to the Brexit crisis and to its incompetent mishandling by a UK government.
At Westminster, reaction from the UK government.
I'm absolutely clear it's not a hostile act, it's a contingency arrangement. The Scottish Government had told us that they intended to do this. What we still see is that the effort and focus should be on reaching agreement over the EU withdrawal bill.
Tomorrow, this Parliament will hear from Scotland's top law officer, who thinks Holyrood can legislate to make sure Brexit doesn't leave gaps in the law. But this debate could go all the way to the UK Supreme Court. Glenn Campbell, reporting Scotland.
Well, let's go to our political editor, Brian Taylor. Brian, we heard there that in terms of the presiding officer's view of a Scottish Government bill, this is unprecedented. Why is the government pushing ahead with this?
This is a big step, a significant step, Jackie, by the Scottish Government. At one level, Mike Russell is adamant that this is simple pragmatism. It's preparing to fill a gap in the law, to offer reassurance should that gap emerge, should for whatever reason the EU withdrawal bill not get through or not gain consent from this Parliament. But, you know, there's more to it than that. This is strategy. This is a warning to Westminster and perhaps even more to Whitehall civil servants. The Scottish ministers simply will not be pushed around. Now, they've been warning on this for months, but to borrow a phrase from the beast from the east, those yellow warnings just got upgraded to amber status.
How do you see this playing out, Brian?
It's a tough one, Jackie. Right now, there's no prospect of a deal, but there are talks next week between Scottish and UK ministers, talks going on right now at official level, talks here as well, cross-party negotiations. What the Scottish Government, what the Scottish Parliament has also stated a view wants is a guarantee that those powers, when they return, if they are to be shared, they are shared by agreement, not by diktat, if you like, from the UK government, although they are adamant that that is not the case. If that deal can be done, then it happens at a UK level and this bill will be withdrawn. This measure in Scotland will be withdrawn. Right now, this one is a really, really tough one. It's on a knife edge, it's on a cliff edge, as indeed so much is with regard to Brexit.
Brian Taylor, thank you. An 82-year-old retired priest charged with the sexual abuse of children as young as 5 has gone on trial at the High Court in Glasgow. The allegations against Father Francis Moore date from 1976 to 1996. He's accused of abusing 3 boys and a student priest at various locations in Ayrshire. He denies all the charges against him. Katrina Renton was in court.
The court heard from the first witness in this trial. The man is now in his 40s. In 1977, when he was just 5 years old, he said he was abused by Father Francis Moore. The man described an alleged incident when he was in Primary 1 at St Mark's Primary School in Irvine. He said the class had been drawing pictures in the run-up to Easter. He said he got into trouble because he drew Christ on the cross with a naked chest. He said a teacher called him a pervert who had offended God and was to be given religious education by Father Moore. He said Father Moore took him into a room in the school, told him he was a lovely boy and he would make it okay. He said time froze. He told the court he was seriously sexually abused by the priest. He said he was in tears and distressed, and Father Moore got angry with him and told him he was a bad lad and he'd have to deal with him and hoped he would behave better when he saw him next. The boy said he told his mother and that she was angry with him and hit him, and that he told her that he didn't want to go back to school, but that she had said to him that she would get him put into a children's home if he didn't go back for being bad. The man said Father Moore abused him 4 or 5 times over a 6-month period at the school. Under cross-examination, it emerged that the same man claimed he was abused at Fort Augustus School near Inverness when he was a teenager. Francis Moore denies all the charges against him, and the trial here at the High Court in Glasgow continues. Katrina Renton, reporting Scotland.
It's been revealed that nearly 16,000 patients in Scotland had to wait more than the target of 6 weeks to undergo key medical tests. The figures from the end of last year are the worst since the Scottish Government set the waiting time target back in 2009. Well, cancer charities have called for urgent action. Our health and social care correspondent Shelley Joffrey joins me. So there's been a big rise in the number of patients missing the target. Why such a big rise?
Well, part of the reason, Jackie, is over the last 2 years there's been a sharp rise in the number of people being referred for diagnostic tests like MRI scans, endoscopies and ultrasounds, up nearly 50% since the end of 2015. Now, partly we're all living longer, there's more awareness of the sorts of symptoms that we should get checked out. But what's staggering is the rise in the number of patients who are now having to wait longer than 6 weeks for those diagnostic tests, up 350% from 3,500 patients to nearly 16,000 in just 2 years. Now, remember, the Scottish Government says no one should wait longer than 6 weeks. And waiting to find out if you've got cancer, for example, can cause huge anxiety, obviously. Cancer charities blame staff shortages, particularly among radiologists, for the delays, and they are calling for urgent action to speed up diagnosis. The Health Secretary, Shona Robson, says that nearly £5 million has been made available to help with diagnostics, and she's told health boards cancer patients must continue to be treated with the highest priority.
Thank you very much, Shelley. There's concern over the future of a GP practice in Aberdeen after its doctors decided to terminate their contract with NHS Grampian this summer. Torrey Medical Practice serves around 7,500 patients. It's the main one in the area. Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership says it hopes to continue clinical services in Torrey and has advised patients not to leave the practice. It's almost 6:45. A reminder now of tonight's main story. Snow and sub-zero temperatures are arriving as travellers are warned they face major disruption over the next 24 hours. And still to come, we drive down memory lane in the Skiach, the car designed and built in Scotland nearly a century ago. Ryanair is to close its base at Glasgow Airport, which the company says could result in the loss of 300 jobs. The airline made the announcement as it unveiled its schedule for next winter. Here's our business and economy editor, Douglas Fraser.
Braced for a hard landing at Glasgow, Europe's biggest airlines diverting to Edinburgh, and not because of the weather. With no Ryanair plane based there from next autumn, Glasgow loses routes and crew. The airline says around 300 jobs will go. Glasgow Airport defines the impact more narrowly at a third of that. Its loss is Edinburgh's gain. The capital takes on 5 Glasgow routes plus another 6. That translates to roughly 1 million passengers on top of 13 million through the terminal last year.
I'm very sad to say that the weaker Glasgow market is simply unable to bear the continuing burden of air passenger duty, which is applied to all fares regardless of whether they're very low fares or very expensive fares, whether the airport charge is very high or very low.
While Prestwick retains a meagre 8 links with a winter sun, at Glasgow Airport they are desperately disappointed. Edinburgh's boss has mixed feelings.
It is good news for Edinburgh, although I think we were very hopeful that this growth was coming. We've got a very good relationship with Ryanair. They're clearly a fast-growing airport across Europe. So this is just reassuring us that we're getting the trajectory we hoped for. But it's actually, at a Scottish level, incredibly disappointing that it's proving to be at the expense of Glasgow. So for Scotland PLC, it's not particularly good news at all.
Like the airline, both airports blame passenger tax, newly devolved to Holyrood, where the Scottish Government aims to cut the duty in half, but not yet. A required exemption to European tax rules is still to be agreed between Brussels and Whitehall.
It's very unfortunate for Glasgow. Of course, they'd want to retain this business. But we do know, of course, we're in the throes of Brexit. We have a disadvantage in terms of the exchange rates, and of course we are unable to make progress on the air passenger duty as well.
Well, much of the rivalry between Edinburgh and Glasgow is a long-standing myth, but this is one area of competition between the airports which is for real. Competition for passengers and for many jobs that spin out from the airports, from flights. Edinburgh has the advantage, perhaps, of these ground transport links like the trams. It might have to do with Brexit or tax, but it's also, in this case, because Edinburgh seems to be a more attractive destination for inbound foreigners. Douglas Fraser, reporting Scotland, Edinburgh.
The Hibs manager, Neil Lennon, is facing a touchline ban after being charged twice by the Scottish Football Association. He was sent to the stand in the match against Kilmarnock for his reaction to the awarding of a penalty against his team. Lennon reacted angrily to that and has been charged with misconduct and of questioning the competence and impartiality of referee Kevin Clancy.
I see other managers behave a lot worse than my behaviour was on Saturday. Even when you see the referee came over to talk to me, I'm stood there quite calmly. I disputed the decision at the time, like any other manager would. There was no conversation between me and the referee, and I was sent straight to the stand, hence my reaction, which I've already maintained I regret.
Now, she's one of Scotland's best ever middle distance runners who believes her wait for a global track medal will end this week. Laura Muir is the British 1500 metre record holder but is yet to make the podium at world or Olympic level. She hopes to change that at the forthcoming World Indoor Athletics Championships. She's been speaking to Cara Denitzan.
By day, she's still a full-time vet student. Laura Muir is far better known, of course, for tearing up the track.
She's now
She struck gold over 1,500 and 3,000 metres at last year's European Indoors, the same double she's attempting this week at the World Indoors in Birmingham.
2 goals would be brilliant, but you know that's going to be very, very tough to do. So yeah, if I could get 2 medals, then that'd be fantastic. And if I could get 1, then even so, I'll leave the competition very happy. I just love to get that global medal. So 1 or 2, or no matter what colour, I'd be really pleased with.
Yeah, because that global medal, that could set you up for the rest of your career potentially.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the competition I'm against, you know, it's very, very strong and very similar to what I'd see outdoors. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be a hard challenge, but at the same time, I feel prepared for it. And gaining a global medal, you know, on the world stage is something that definitely, I think, puts your career out there and makes you someone to be content with.
She's been a 1,500 metres contender for several years now. 5th at the World Championships in Beijing, before a 7th place finish at the Rio Olympics. And she could scarcely have been closer in London last year.
Laura Muir was so close, and when you have the medal snatched away from you in the latter stages, it's gut-wrenching, gut-wrenching.
I'm really proud of how I ran, and it was just one of those things that last 10 metres I went from being 2nd to 4th in the 1500, and it was hard, you know, just being so close, but it was a great experience. I learnt a lot, at the same time just missing out on that global medal, but hope to rectify that hopefully here.
And she'll have fellow Scot Ailish McColgan for company in both events.
It's great to have Ailish there, and yeah, you know, she's a really tough competitor and works really hard, and sure Dundee will get a good shout out on the TV.
It's amazing that, isn't it? I mean, there'll be probably club runners up and down the country thinking, oh, that is amazing, you know, 2 Dundee Hawkhill Harriers in the British team at a World Championships.
Yeah, no, I mean it's great, and I think we've seen, you know, certainly Scottish athletics, so many youngsters have been inspired by seeing us out there competing, and I think it's great to have 2 people that have ran at a local club, you know, still compete in Scotland quite often, and they're at the World Championships, so no, it's great to see.
Her bid for another golden double gets underway on Thursday night. Kerry Nidsan, reporting Scotland.
Let's hope so. Well, this fine machine may not have been as fast as Laura Muir, but it was the only one of its kind made commercially in Scotland, but also had the shortest production run in the history of car production here. Well, now, nearly 100 years after it was unveiled at the Glasgow Motor Show, the Skiach cycle car is to be recreated in its hometown of Dalbeattie. Willie Johnson can tell us more.
Cycle cars had their heyday just after World War I. Having driven military vehicles, many returning soldiers wanted cars of their own, but most were too expensive. Based on motorcycle parts, cycle cars were priced for the common man. Like the Skiach, £180 complete, or £15 less without accessories like headlights. Designer James Skiach took his first car to the 1921 Glasgow Motor Show. It attracted great interest and was bought inside 10 minutes. Production then started in Dalbeattie, but was short-lived. In December 1921, fire spread from an adjoining building and destroyed James Skiach's factory. He suffered around £4,000 of uninsured losses, and that spelled the end of the business. Only 10 cars had been built.
The engine drives the gearbox by a chain.
No Skiach cars are known to survive, but there are some parts. An engine, gearbox and wheels, even a radiator badge. Also crucially, the original drawings. The Skiach family has asked volunteers at Dalbeattie Men's Shed to build a replica.
It's engineering rich, it's Dalbeattie rich, it's community rich. It fills so many of our requirements.
It depends how purist you are. You could make a replica of the car that would pass muster using a modern engine and a modern gearbox and using modern parts. But the spirit of the car is very much based on the parts that were available in 1920. And this project will be very like the original car.
It'll be tremendous to actually see the car, to be able to I'm actually rather hoping I can physically get to sit in the car. I'm not quite sure I would be trusted with driving it. It's only got 2 gears apparently, but I think it would be rather wonderful. And what I really hope is that my mother gets the opportunity to actually, to actually sit in the car as well.
It's hoped to have a Skiach car back on the road in time for its centenary. Willie Johnston, reporting Scotland, Dalbeattie.
Well, now let's get the latest weather forecast from Christopher.
Jackie, thank you.
Hello there. Well, a spell of wintry weather to come over the next 24 to 48 hours. This was the scene in the capital earlier, snow falling, and it will continue to fall over the next couple of days because we've got that beast from the east, as you will have heard about, this cold Siberian air driving its way right across the country, feeding in snow showers. A wide-scale yellow be aware warning, but it's the amber be prepared warning that we're most concerned about. These warnings from the Met Office, and it's within this area that we're likely to see the greatest disruption from those snow showers. So through the course of this evening and overnight, you can see them coming in on that east-northeasterly wind, and they are showers. It's not a line of snow, but it's showers. So if you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row, that's where we're likely to see problems arise with snow accumulating. A cold night, a hard frost and a cold start to the day tomorrow. And the showers, well, there's no let-up. They continue, especially across central and eastern Scotland. There will be disruption to travel, perhaps some interruptions to power supply at times too. Towards the west coast and the Hebrides, well, a little bit drier here, but you'll still get 1 or 2 showers at times. Let's take a closer look around mid-afternoon and up towards Shetland. 1 or 2 light showers here, but it's further south that we'll see the greatest impact from these showers. And you'll see them starting to form lines. And it's where these lines of showers occur is where we're likely to see the greatest impact. Look at the temperatures as well. This is the best we're likely to get tomorrow. 0, -1. It's going to feel bitterly cold. Add on that fresh, occasionally strong easterly wind, and it will feel raw. Towards the west coast, again, a little bit drier, a little bit brighter, still very cold. And come tomorrow afternoon and evening, those showers still with us. Further disruption is likely on the roads and on the travel front generally. And the amber warning still with us as we go through towards Thursday, because there will be further snow showers coming in off the North Sea, driven in on those keen easterly winds. Once again, it really will feel bitterly cold. The further west that you are, the drier it will be, but most of those showers, the most frequent showers for central and eastern parts, and temperatures again barely above freezing in places. Looking ahead towards the end of the week on Friday, well, we have systems working their way up from the south as they engage the cold air, likely to see a spell of heavy snow overnight, but certainly wintry weather for the next few days. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you very much, Christopher. And the weather forms our main headline. A warning to travellers that they could face major disruption over the next 24 hours. And the Scottish Government throws down the gauntlet to Westminster over Brexit by publishing its EU withdrawal bill. But Holyrood's presiding officer says the bill goes beyond the Parliament's powers. And that's Reporting Scotland. Our next roundup, 10:30 from all of us. Goodbye.